defensive coordinator at Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, South Carolina, head coach at Southern Mississippi, the Citadel, coaching stints at many other schools. Ellis Johnson, we're thrilled that he's with us every Thursday. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning, Gary. How you doing?
Doing great. We got a closure and a resolution on the Urban Meyer story. He does keep his job as the head coach at The Ohio State University. I thought this was kind of a compromise deal that he's serving a 3-game suspension because to me, either he didn't do anything wrong and he coaches or he did do something wrong and he's fired. But as you know, in this politically correct society, sometimes you have to have compromise. He will miss the first 3 games and then will take over in game number 4. Just your takeaways from this story and how it turned out.
Well, I have to say I did not see the press conference last night, but boy, is everything on the news today. I feel like I know everything about it and saw it twice. I listened to a sports talk show, got out of the car, was gone for an hour and a half, got back in the car, and the same sports talk show is still talking about the same subject. And apparently he and most everybody involved in the press conference did not do a good job with it. I haven't heard anybody in any national media that felt like it was handled correctly. I don't know exactly what they failed to do or didn't do, but one thing that did come out of it that I find really astounding is that nobody personally made an apology to that lady.
Right.
And I found that absolutely shocking. Now, I still don't know all the details about what he knew, when he knew, what his wife knew, when did she tell him, who did they tell, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that part of it is very important. It's probably that he did the right things, maybe didn't do them in a timely fashion or not as expedited as well as he should have. I really don't know. Or was it because he didn't come truthful with the press? I would hope that was not the case because although I wouldn't have told the press, something untruthful, I don't feel like that was something he should have had to address that day. So I don't know. I just feel like the whole thing, nothing can be done to fix the wrongs that were done to this lady. But I've questioned why the police did not act more forthright, why he wasn't arrested and charged earlier than he was. I don't know. There's so many other people to blame other than Urban Meyer. So I don't know. To me, sometimes there's a little bit of piling on going on. But,
yeah, and you're right, though.
I just wish the whole thing would go away. We're starting football in 9 days. Someone needs to apologize to her, and somebody needs to make sure things like that don't ever happen.
You're absolutely right. And the fact that he apologized to everybody that they had to be there, but did not, as you said, issue a direct apology to the alleged victim was baffling to a lot of people. Let's be honest, too, Coach. I mean, you're a veteran in this business. Record matters. The job you've done as a football coach matters. He's 73-8. If he were 41-40. I mean, my guess is he probably wouldn't have a job there. We're in such a time where, social media drives agendas and being politically correct. Sometimes people just don't want to be honest. I mean, this guy's a good football coach, probably the second best football coach in the country, has a record that will go down as one of the best of all time. That played a factor as far as Ohio State's concerned. The Board of Trustees and the people there that support that program, I'm sure the fact that he's 73-8 with a national championship, several Big Ten titles, that matters. That's reality.
It probably did. I would also tend to think, though, that there had to be substantial evidence that he punched the right buttons, maybe didn't do it exactly the way he should have. But evidently with the investigation that they went through, it was found that he did report to the proper authorities. He did share this information. Was there something he should have known earlier that he didn't know? Was there something his wife told him and maybe they tried to handle it privately first? I can remember a situation happened in Alabama. We tried to handle something. We didn't know what a kid had done. We tried to handle something by telling him what he should do or something. And it's just all kind of little things that I don't think everybody knows. But I hope things cleaned up and what should be done for this lady, both legally and morally and ethically, is followed through. I personally hold more people responsible for that university than I do Urban Meyer.
Let's move on to the on-the-field side for Ohio State. He's going to miss the first 3 games at home against Oregon State, at home against Rutgers. Certainly, I mean, Ohio State, I think, would win those games with me coaching. But they do go to TCU on the 15th of September for a tough game, and then he's back for the home game against Tulane. he's the head coach. He won't be with the team, but clearly he'll be conversing with the staff and so forth. Do you see any potential for this team to get tripped up at TCU without their head coach on the 15th of September there in Fort Worth?
Gary, the way I look at it, I don't think the head coach will be missed as much in a ball game as he would be through camp and
right.
through the structural things they've been through so far. If this team has great leadership and the staff has done what they hopefully tried to do, and that's pull together, stay on track, do what they're supposed to do, and whoever was appointed as interim coach, treat that guy just like the head coach as long as he's sitting in that seat. If they do all of that, then the team can perform up to the level of its potential. They're not going to get tripped up by anybody. Now, TCU may just beat them. They're good enough to beat them on a given day. But I think it's more of a build up of distractions and constant news and all these type things that have probably been pretty tough on these players and the staff. And that's going to be where the distractions and the possible, the obstructions that will keep them from playing their best. I don't think it's going to be because of an in-game organizational aspect. Most times staffs are so used to working with each other during the course of a game. And obviously there could be a few critical decisions made, and he's proven he makes pretty good decisions. There could be something of that nature, but I'd be much more worried about the cumulative effect of this distraction that has gone on. And people tend to think it's not over yet. They think the national media is going to drive this train until it comes back around and there's another wreck, and they don't think this thing's over yet.
Wow. Let's move on to College Station, Texas. Jimbo Fisher has not been shy about saying, listen, I inherited a soft football team. Jimbo Fisher's an old school guy. Kevin Sumlin, the former coach, more of the new school. We're going to spread you out. We're going to finesse you. We're going to make big plays. Fisher came in there and said, we got to get tougher. And in an attempt to do that, according to a former player, Santino Martial, who, by the way, transferred to Arizona, so let's keep that in mind, to go be with his former coach. But because he wanted to transfer and be eligible immediately, he filed a request with the NCAA for a waiver through the mitigating circumstances aspect that was put in place last year because of those 6 Ole Miss players who said they had been misled by Hugh Freeze. They were allowed to transfer without sitting out, including Shea Patterson, who would be the starting quarterback at Michigan. But in that request, he made a lot of what I consider to be serious allegations. Money was given to him to hand out to recruits. Illegal workouts were held while coaches did evaluations. Of course, we get the one that's becoming common, demeaning language, and he was pushed through an injury, so forth and so on. I don't know. Again, I mean, football's football. It's a tough game. I do think we have to keep in mind that this is a guy that's leaving the program. Sounds a little bitter to me, but still not the way that I'm sure Jimbo Fisher wanted to get this first season underway with this cloud hanging over the program. What do you make of this story?
Well, it's that old dilemma. I mean, you got a disgruntled player who's gone, or a disgruntled coach or employee who's gone, making all the accusations. So initially, you almost say, well, we've got to make sure we verify this, or this could just be sour grapes. On the other hand, the accusations are pretty serious. Bottom line, if coaches gave out cash, then where's the evidence? If there's no evidence, then I think, let him complain all he wants to. I just think that one needs to be brushed aside. If there is evidence they gave him cash, then it needs to be, I guess it needs to be dealt with. The workouts running too long is the way I read it. They had off-season workouts that didn't stay within the time limits. Those kind of things are happening everywhere. And I don't mean to cast a shadow on all the programs across the country, but some of these time limits and everything are so ridiculous, and the way you have to document them and everything, and everybody's doing the best they can with it. But, if you get some kind of weather delay, or you get some kind of situation where you change a practice date because of weather or because of a facility, Carolina couldn't even use their football stadium now for the last 5 days because they put Beyonce in it. I don't know what genius call that shot, but middle of preseason football practice. But there are all kind of things that get into that. But if they've got proper documentation on their workouts, then that's bogus too. Demeaning names.
Wouldn't many people be coaching football if they didn't yell occasionally?
Especially some of us that weren't real good players. We got called a lot of stuff. But I don't. If you really, really calling kids names and being degrading and all that, I don't know if that's a violation, but it certainly needs to be dealt with. There's no need for that. No 20-year-old man's going to respond to that kind of crap anyhow.
Right.
So, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. It's just I'm so tired of the preseason being full of all the personal interest stories and the NCAA violation stories and the abuse stories with coaches that don't work there anymore. These things really ought to be handled in another arena. And I just think sometimes there's so much information out there now because of technology. The people who write sports now, they have to write about things that are controversial, and nobody's going to read them because they've already got all their stats and their information off the websites about who the starting tackle is and how fast the running backs are. All that stuff's available to you 24/7. So the writers now, they spend all their time now on stuff that's not very much athletic related. And it's just that's the way it is. That's the world we live in today, and I guess that's what you're going to hear and that's what you're going to read about.
Yeah, I think you're right on, Coach. I think it's a combination of we're spoiled. Used to 20 years ago, you got a little tidbit of information, man, you were excited and it carried you. But now we get so much information because there's so many different sites covering these sports, and then because of that, these coaching staffs, I think, have pulled back. They're actually trying to give out less access than what was given in the past. So you have these different media people, and me included, looking for stories, looking for angles, and oftentimes,
Absolutely.
Particularly these big outfits that have these quote unquote investigative reporters. Well, that tells you all you need to know. If you're hired to be an investigative reporter, you better be finding something to investigate, Coach. That's just the reality of it. I mean, if you're an investigative reporter, you got to do some investigating. And if you don't come up with something, they're probably going to say, listen, we don't need you investigating anymore because you're not coming up with it. So you're right. Get the season here, man, because, I mean, this stuff's just getting ridiculous. With that in mind, let's talk about Alabama. Crimson Tide opening it up 9 days from now in Orlando against Louisville, a team that I think, I know they lost some guys on defense. They don't have Lamar Jackson, but they got quality athletes. They were vying for an ACC championship a couple times here under Bobby Petrino. They've got skilled guys on offense, a lot of receivers that can catch the ball. I know Alabama's a 27-point favorite, but I think if this were a lot of schools opening up against Louisville in Orlando in a Saturday night primetime game on ABC, it would be considered a big game. I think because of what Alabama's accomplished, people are taking this game lightly. Tell me about Louisville, and I think they can put up a pretty good fight here. I just don't think it's going to be a roll the ball out there and they're going to roll over. They're going to come to play, I believe.
Well, I've certainly coached against Coach Petrino, and I've actually spent a month with him at Arkansas. I've never seen a bad Bobby Petrino football team. I've seen some that weren't as talented and weren't as good as some of the teams they were matched up against, but he's a heck of a coach. I mean, a great offensive mind. I don't know much about their personnel coming back. I haven't followed it very closely, but I do know that offensively, he's as good a coach as there is in the country. As an opening game, you always, anytime you're favored, you're probably, opening games can be a little precarious. Because I think just like South Carolina's playing Georgia early this year, personally, if I was at South Carolina, I would like that. Most teams have not found exactly who they are until about the third or fourth week of the season. They know a lot about themselves, but they really don't know exactly what they have until about 3 or 4 games into the season. And then injuries and performances, surprise performances in a good fashion, some disappointing performances, possibly the depth chart changes and so forth. This is a tough opener. Alabama obviously should win because they should be able to play 4 quarters with more players and wear them down a little bit, probably have a lot more playmakers on the field at the end of the game. It's a tough opener. And, a lot of teams are opening with very easy games where they can play a lot of players and get a good look at their depth chart. This may not be one of those. We just have to see how good Louisville is.
Coach Saban last Saturday following the scrimmage was asked if he's concerned about injuries, and I thought he gave a great response. Yeah, I've been concerned. I think this perception that Alabama gets somebody hurt and they just plug in a guy that's just as good, I understand where it comes from, all these top-ranked recruiting classes, but there's a reason one guy's playing ahead of another guy, and injuries impact every team. And I think also he said to Chris Lowe this week from ESPN, that with the 8 guys going on to the NFL off the defense, that he thought this team might have to score more points than some of his teams of the past because of the fact that they've lost so many players on defense. Last year, I thought that they held people to 11.8 points per game is phenomenal in this day and age. But, talk about that as a coach. I mean, it's got to bother him that he just feels like the fans just expect no matter what happens to their team, somebody gets suspended or somebody gets hurt, that they're going to be just as good. And that's not always the case. I mean, injuries impact everybody, and Alabama's no exception.
Absolutely. There's not a college football team in America that doesn't have at least 1 or 2 position groups on the field where they don't have quality depth. It's just the nature of the scholarship numbers. Now, some people may have a little better depth than others, but you could have a position, and I think he was talking the other day that possibly at linebacker they're precariously thin. And I know like South Carolina at the safety position, they were coming in only 2 proven players, and we'll have to move a corner in there. Then they were going to have to count on some newcomers to give them depth. So there are a couple of areas on about any college football team that if you sustain injuries, especially losing the kid for multiple weeks or even for the season, it could be a really, really negative effect on your program. So I don't know their depth chart in detail, but he's not one to play all those kind of things to any kind of tune of just trying to overdo it. If he says he's got depth issues and he's concerned about injuries, I'm sure they probably do.
He is not going to play his hand on these quarterbacks at all. That's obvious, despite all the public angst and the fans wanting to hear an announcement and so forth. He's playing it close to the vest. He's keeping all his options open. From a coaching standpoint, do you think that's the right way to approach this, the smart way to approach it?
I guess, man, if they've had a clear winner in the contest, I think the quicker you name him, the team needs to know. I wouldn't be as concerned about the fan base. They're going to find out the first game, and that's early enough for them. A lot of this is good because it keeps them all interested in talking and stirred up, and there's nothing wrong with that. It could be there's just not a clear battle yet. One of them may be making more impressive plays, but the other one may be moving the football team a little more consistency. He may see some leadership factors that are pretty obvious within his football team. There's just a lot of things probably me and you don't know. Other people listening don't know that Coach Saban does know. I would think that if he's holding the decision, he either doesn't know what it is or he has shared it with his players, but just hadn't put it out, in the public or in the fan base. That's a good problem to have as long as they handle it correctly with the players.
Is that possible in this day and age that the players could know possibly already who the starter is and keep it from the media, keep it from the fans? Do you think you can even pull that off in this day and age?
Well, I guess maybe it shouldn't say that they've been given any kind of official word.
But do you think you could do it? Do you think there's a possibility the players can know and keep it in-house and it not get out?
I'd be very doubtful.
Okay.
Eventually it would get out. But, it could be that one of them's getting more of the reps and the players realize it. Could be that they've talked, maybe an offensive lineman talking to his position coach, and they've kind of talked around it a little bit and said, yes, so-and-so really is. He's got more command of it right now. And you guys just got to support both of them, da-da-da-da-da. You just don't know. But I would think that if there's anything, if Coach Saban knows already, then I would think the team knows.
Over in the East, we continue to look closely at Georgia's Zamir White. The 5-star running back goes down with an ACL in their scrimmage last week. I know running back is a position of strength for them, even with the 2 guys, Michelle and Chubb, going on to the NFL. Still, though, again, we're talking about injuries. You lose a guy of that caliber, I think they were counting on him playing as a true freshman, at least as a backup.
Yeah, that's going to be devastating. First of all, it's going to hamper the young man's progress. Physically, the surgeries and so forth, a few days were more successful, and you'd have to feel fairly positive and get it repaired and get it rehabbed, and he'll be back to form. But on the other hand, you just hate for a young player like that to miss a season, especially when they thought he was good enough to contribute and play some, because there's just no substitute for that game experience, especially in that conference. But it's just a terrible thing. But as you said, it's not going to probably hurt them as a team immediately because they do have good players. and some depth already there at that position. But they put you in a precarious situation one more time. One of them gets a shoulder banged up, out for 3 or 4 weeks. Now all of a sudden you're down to one quality guy. And what's made them so good the last year or two in the running game is they've had 2 to 3 quality guys, and they're just as fresh in the fourth quarter, and they're just as fresh in the 8th and 9th game as they were at the beginning. And that makes it awfully tough when you got players that talented.
Coach Ellis Johnson with us every Thursday at 9:30 here on the Gary Harris Show. Thank you, Coach.
Enjoyed it. Maybe next time we won't have to talk about it.
Yeah, I tell you what, next week we're going to focus strictly on football. We'll have games talk about, so I'm looking forward to that. Thanks a lot, Coach.
Thank you, Gary.